Stage on behalf of Community College. So Elizabeth, thank you for coming and thank you for having us today. And that means time to say clap, clap, clap. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Well, we're really excited for this event to see everybody here, and we hope that it will be a really fruitful day with some great conversations about what has been going on in the community as well as what is yet to be. So thank you again for being here, and we welcome you. Ask me or some students who are standing around the food table for any questions related to the campus. Also, there's an admissions staff person, Carolyn, up by the check-in desk as well. I just wanted to say that we are going to have a Brazilian lunch from Sabor Brazil, and the students will be serving you from my multicultural engagement program who are non-native speakers of English. And I just wanted to invite you all to please stay and enjoy networking time and enjoy some great food, and give a shout out to Sabor Brazil, who is a wonderful supporter of many community events that we do. And they're on Canal Street. So thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
And Elizabeth, before you leave the stage, I'd like to present you and the community college with a certificate thanking you for not just hosting us, but also being part of the planning committee to make this event happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so first thing that happens in any event like this, any meeting like this, is you know that it's the very first thing that somebody's going to say is, okay, take out your cell phone and put it on silent. So I'm going to actually ask everybody to take out their cell phone, but with intention. So pull out your phone out of your pocket or your pocketbook. It might already be on silent or mute. I don't know. I actually don't care. But I want you to take a second to think about the device in your hand, because this is really the meat of the subject today. When we talk about access to the digital world, one of the things that I've had the opportunity to do a couple of times is just to pull out my phone and ask myself, what could I do if I did not have this? And what this represents is not just a telephone. I mean, for old people like me, it is a telephone. For younger people, it's maybe a texting device. And for all of the rest of us, this is access to the internet and the rest of the world. What we have in our pockets and our pocketbooks is a computer that's connected to the rest of the world. And try to think for a second, what could you not do if you did not have that? And ponder that throughout the day, but also in the next days and weeks ahead, because I'll tell you, the list is pretty enormous, and we're going to talk in depth today about what that would look like and what some of the barriers are for people in our communities as we talk about digital access and digital barriers. And by the way, do put it on silent, please. Thank you very much. I wanted to actually ask Nicole Thibault to come up to the stage. Comcast is, Nicole, did I say Nicole? I meant Monica. Sorry. Is it really your middle name? Monica Thibault. Monica is from Comcast. They're our sponsor for today. Comcast has been a tremendous partner with us in addressing digital barriers in our community and in communities all across the country. And we're appreciative for them helping to make today's event possible. So Monica, if you could please come up and say a couple of words.
Thank you, Mike. We're excited to support today's event and be part of the Greater Nashua Digital Equity Coalition. Our support today is part of Comcast's initiative to connect people to the internet, create digital opportunity, and build a future of unlimited possibilities called Project Up. This commitment is helping to expand internet access, deliver digital skills training, and drive economic mobility. Through thousands of community partnerships and programs across Comcast and NBC Universal, we are working to provide digital opportunities and ensure everyone can benefit from being connected to the internet. Whether in rural communities or urban centers, we are working to make internet accessible to all, helping more people connect to education, healthcare, jobs, and much needed resources. We launched Internet Essentials in 2011 to bring affordable, high-speed internet to qualifying families, connecting more than 10 million people in over 10 years. Together with nonprofit partners and city leaders, we have created more than 1,250 award-winning lift zones in community centers nationwide to provide students and communities with free, high capacity Wi-Fi. We invest in community-based programs that offer digital skills training, job training, and career development for individuals at all stages of learning, from high school students to career-changing adults, and provide entrepreneurs and small businesses with the resources they need to compete and innovate in a technology-driven economy. Thank you for having us here today. We look forward to some great discussion and continuing to partner on important issues like today. Thank you.
Monica, thank you. On behalf of our coalition, we also would like to express our appreciation to you and to Comcast for all of your support. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So a little bit about today's agenda. Everybody should have gotten a leaflet on the way in. That carries a copy of the agenda. Basically, we're probably going to not end up following the agenda because it's the first time we've done this, but the general gist of the way today will flow is...
Really a pleasure to be here. This reminds me of being back at UNH and in my own classroom where you have maybe 1, 2, or 3 people that sit in the front row, some people in the middle. The only difference is that most of my students sit in the back row. But anyway, I want to start out by asking a reflective question of you. And I'm giving you a fair warning that I'm going to actually solicit responses from you. I want you to imagine your life without internet access. Now, statistically speaking, 1 in 10 people don't have internet access, and that may be some of us in here. And specifically, I want you to think about what is one thing that you do normally in your everyday life that relies on internet connectivity that you wouldn't be able to do without internet access. So I'll give you a second to think about that. And I'm not going to do like I do to my students, and I'm not going to pick on you. I'm going to ask you to volunteer to share some of your thoughts. So your entire job, right? And can I ask what you do? Software engineering, right? What else? Other things that you wouldn't be able to do, Christina? Read the news. I think most of us now read the news online instead of getting the newspaper or other periodical. Other things. Yes. So Facebook and other forms of social media is a critical way for us to stay in touch with our family, with our community, and our friends. And that's how we learn about what our people that are close to us are doing. Right. It's hard to see in here with that, but other things that you wouldn't be able to do. Yes, in the back there. Communicate through email. I hate to ask, but how many emails do you think you either get or send every day? Hundreds, yeah. So there's a lot of information going back and forth with those emails. Other things, yes? Daily banking and financial transactions, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. So, Mike? Occasionally you go to the doctor, okay. And so what's the connection to internet with that? Remote medical, yeah. Yeah, yes. Yes. Navigation systems in the car. I probably wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere else if I didn't have my navigation system in my car, so absolutely, yeah. Yes, in the middle, yeah. Searching the internet like an encyclopedia. Yeah, it's the #1 source that people go to for information, whether it's Wikipedia or AI or ChatGPT. We use that to get basic information. So, yeah. Share resources. And what sorts of resources are you thinking? It's an effective way to get information out to families. So, say that again? Online education, yeah, increasingly. You know, my own daughter is taking classes through VLAX, the Virtual Learning Academy, in courses that she wouldn't otherwise be able to attend. For people that live in rural places, that's a critical access point. So, online education, yes. The weather, yeah. I mean, I think I look at the weather app probably 10 times a day to find out when that little break in the rain is going to be. So, yes, absolutely. So, yes. Well, it's funny because I found that same Dunkin' Donuts before I came here. So yes. Mm. Yeah. With AI, there are some very advanced tools out there to be able to advance our work and to be more productive and to be able to use that information. So I think you're getting the picture, is that there's not much about our daily lives that the internet doesn't touch. I'm going to share just a few things. I think you probably hit upon most of them. So Mike, I think you mentioned accessing healthcare. If you live in a rural area, sometimes that's your only option, or if you need a specialist outside of the state, or to access your medical records, or just to look up information about health-related issues, the internet is critical, it's vital. Job searching. I remember when I graduated from college, I used to go through the periodicals, the classified information, and I'd have to go to the classifieds for every place that I wanted to consider working in. And when I finished grad school, I had to purchase the trade association's job list, which updated every month, and I had to keep buying it. So now you have Indeed, you have Monster, and if you don't have access to those online job portals, it is really challenging. It's difficult to even find out what's out there, let alone obtain a job. I think we talked about, someone mentioned banking. It's not impossible, but it's pretty darn hard to have a checking account and manage your finances if you're not doing it online. In fact, banks are increasingly pushing people to online, and some are reducing hours and even eliminating some of their face-to-face tellers. So that is something. I can't even imagine how I could manage my finances without having access. Someone talked about access to information, whether it's Wikipedia, ChatGPT, other online resources, or online curricula. One thing we didn't mention is assistive devices for people who have a hearing impairment or an auditory or a visual impairment or a mobility impairment. Those digital assistive devices are critical to help people be able to navigate in the world. And then being a citizen in your community or just connecting with your family. So I think you hit upon all of those things. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I also want you to imagine what it would be like if you didn't have digital literacy, if you didn't have the knowledge and the skills to be able to navigate the internet and the devices, digital devices such as your phone or laptop or other device to be able to navigate that. That would be really challenging. Many of these same challenges. One thing I learned the other day that in the job market, because most of my work is around economic development, over 90% of jobs today require some level of digital literacy. And so, conversely, those 10% of jobs that don't require some level of digital literacy tend to be lower paying jobs. They oftentimes are very physically demanding and maybe higher risk. So if someone doesn't have the literacy to be able to navigate devices or the internet, they may be relegated to those 10%. And it's not to say that those jobs aren't good jobs, but certainly a lot of the opportunity in the marketplace is foreclosed on you because you don't have the skills to be able to enter the workforce. So that is another important function. So some of these digital divide barriers that we've been talking about, well, there is actually an approach to be able to address some of them. So In 2021, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as we called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill in Congress, passed what's known as the Digital Equity Act. And the Digital Equity Act was intended to make sure that people have not only access to internet, they have access to devices, the literacy skills, and know how to use the internet safely, and the whole host of services that are available via the internet and through digital devices. So through this act, close to $3 billion were allocated to support digital advancement across the country. And as part of that, each state developed a digital equity plan. And I had the good fortune of leading New Hampshire's digital equity plan. In fact, many of you in the room here were part of that process. So that digital equity plan was really focused on populations, sorry, I keep clicking the wrong button here, that are at risk or that are historically don't have access or as good access to internet and have as strong literacy. So those populations include low-income households, veterans, aging individuals, rural populations, incarcerated individuals, et cetera. So the focus of the Digital Equity Plan was on these populations to make sure that they have opportunity to have access to a device. And it's not just having access to it, but affordable access. And in some cases, free access. Because without that, people are marginalized. They get left out in the cold. They don't have access to many of the opportunities that we do in our everyday lives that we've already talked about. So as part of this process, this planning process actually took about 1.5 years. It involved a pretty big team of us. We held over 95 meetings across the state. We had focus groups. We connected with organizations that serve these populations. We connected directly with these populations. We conducted a statewide sample survey of over 3,000 people. We collected secondary data, interviewed people, met with state agencies. There was a lot of legwork that went into this so that we could understand what the particular challenges were in each of the regions of the state. And we learned a lot, and I certainly don't have time to dive into all of that, but I can share some highlights of some things. Is that there are a number of programs out there that subsidize the cost of internet and also provide devices. But however, when we asked people how aware they were of these programs, over 1/3 of people were not aware that these programs even existed. So they're leaving resources on the table when they could have had a voucher to get access. And I know the federal government cut some of the ACA connectivity program. They cut that benefit, which provided $30 worth of access per month. But there are other programs out there too. Many providers have programs that enable people to access internet for low or reduced cost. And people aren't aware of what those are. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to inform people of what's out there. So in a nutshell, these are the overarching goals of the Digital Equity Plan. And for each of these goals that I'm not going to dive into now, we have a series of strategies. And one thing that's important to note is that we wanted to make sure that the strategies were appropriate for each of the regions across the state. Because the North Country is not the same as Nashua, and the Seacoast is not the same as the southwest part of the state. So we did a lot of work listening to what the challenges and barriers were in each of the regions. So we developed a plan that had nuance to it so that each of the regions could identify its own priorities and begin to move forward from there. So now, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm sure many of you are already aware of this. There have been some bumps in the road. A couple weeks ago, the Digital Equity Act, which supported our digital equity plan and was supposed to bring $5 million in capacity funding to the state to implement programs, as well as competitive funding, which might have been 5 or 10 million more in competitive funding. That program was eliminated. It was nullified. The Digital Equity Act has been contested by the White House in And the stance is that by focusing on covered populations, it's being discriminatory to those people that don't fall into that. So it's disappointing and hard for those of us who spent a lot of time working on this digital equity plan to know that this Digital Equity Act is no longer guiding policy. However, much of what we wrote into the digital equity plan doesn't need an infusion of money. Money can certainly help, but there is so much that's already happening across the state. Really exciting, good, powerful things that are happening across the state. And so in my mind, the plan still has a lot of value to guide the communities and guide the regions and the state in moving forward. And I want to spend a little time highlighting some of the exciting things that are happening. And by no means do I know everything that's going on, but I can certainly highlight some examples of some things. So I'm going to share some success stories with you. So first and foremost, across the state, there are a number of coalitions that are focused on expanding broadband access and digital literacy. And Nashua is doing some of the pioneering work. And Mike and Sarah, I really commend the work that you're doing. You've developed a program of digital navigators. You have a device refurbishment program. You're providing digital literacy training. You're supporting entrepreneurs that use the internet to be able to launch their businesses. You're doing so much good work that we and other parts of the state are looking at you as a model to figure out how we can do it. I don't know if my colleague Nate is here, but we wanted to replicate what you're doing in Nashua, and so we formed a group in the Seacoast area focused on digital opportunity. And that coalition is comprised of a variety of human and social service agencies and organizations, educational institutions, and private businesses. And they're kind of in the beginning phases of identifying priorities and needs. The Monadnock region in the southwest part of the state, the Regional Planning Commission, is actually leading another group that's focused not just on access, but they did an inventory of digital opportunity resources about a year ago. Grafton County has done incredible work to build connectivity. The town of Bristol really kind of started things going, and they've engaged other towns in improving connectivity. Carroll County has its own district. The North Country has done a lot of work in collaboration with Vermont and even with Canada. So there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening around the state with regard to coalitions. And this is proof that if you bring different organizations together, there's a lot that you can do to advance digital opportunity. Switching gears a little bit, there's a lot of work that's being done to inventory resources that are out there. What we found is that there's no single place where we could determine where internet access points were, or organizations that provided free Wi-Fi, or programs that distributed refurbished devices. This information was really hard to find, and so we conducted an asset inventory. And this is an example of a prototype tool that we developed. It's a map-based tool that you can enter if you're a provider of any sorts of services, whether it's device access, discounted internet, or training, you can enter your information and it populates a map, and you can select by category, or you can select by region to see what's available. Unfortunately, we haven't had the resources to build this out further, but certainly if this is something that would be of value, we would be happy to continue working on this because we have the infrastructure already built to do that. I know some of the coalitions are doing work to inventory assets and resources in their own region. So I think one thing that would be helpful is for all of us to sort of have a way to unite and coalesce all of this information so that we have a statewide picture of what's out there. So. Digital navigator programs. There is a lot of work that's being done. I already mentioned Mike, I believe it's called the Tech Connect United. They have a program where they think they have over 100 digital navigators supporting people and navigating them through computer use, which is impressive. One thing I should mention, the Institute on Disability at UNH has a navigator program for those with disabilities who need to learn how to use devices. Many schools have programs that assist seniors. My daughter is part of one of those programs where they actually go out to there's a senior home in my community where they actually go out and work with seniors, teaching them about internet use and device use. libraries are a critical access point, and they, some formally and some informally, provide that navigation support. Adult ed programs around the state. And then we have so many organizations like AARP and the Community Action Coalitions. There's so many organizations out there that are assisting in some way in that navigation ecosystem, and it's critical. Digital device programs. Of course, there are a lot of digital device programs. Again, I already talked about the United Ways program. I think the New Hampshire libraries have a technology grant program that allows for upgrades on devices and provides access. The Institute on Disability has a loan program where they loan out assistive devices and technologies. Many colleges and universities in the state have programs for students that can't afford to buy a computer, that they take refurbished computers and either loan it or provide it for free. So there's a lot of digital device programs that are out there. I'm not aware of all of them, but I'm sure there are many more that I didn't mention. Cybersecurity. I know when I used to think about cybersecurity, I used to think about sort of military secrets and securing really sensitive information. But cybersecurity is also about keeping us safe, or your aging parents safe as they navigate the internet from scams and things like that. I know my mother-in-law was almost taken for a scam. A pop-up came up on her window, on her computer, and it said that her bank account had been compromised and that she needed to take $10,000 out of the bank account and quickly put it into a Bitcoin machine. And fortunately, she stopped by my house before she did this. And I know that this is something that, and that's one scheme that tends to target seniors, but I think probably all of us, or many of us, can say that we've been scammed in some way or another. So it's something that as AI begins to advance, and people and voices can be mimicked, and as technology advances, these scams are going to become more prevalent, and we have to be really aware, and we have to provide education to prevent that from happening as much as it does. So I think the message I want to leave all of you with is that there's a lot of really good work happening in the state. Would it be nice to have additional resources to support that work? Of course it would, but there are also ways to leverage the things that we already have. And I think I already provided some examples of what's happening across the state. I know our panelists are going to share some exciting things that are happening. And I think the goal is to weave together this network of resources that are out there. So, Mike, I don't know if we have time for questions, but I wanted to open the floor. And
we can take one or two questions, and then at the end with the panelists, take more.
Absolutely. So it's up to you folks. You can ask a question or two now, or you can wait until after the panel is. Yes?
Of all the resources that you listed, and it's still a problem,
Mm-hmm.
what is the biggest obstacle to ready to solve the problem?
Well, I guess, so I'm going to provide my perspective on it. So I was at a meeting the other day, and it was talking about there are a number of programs out there that focus on workforce, but these programs are not necessarily networked and integrated together. So it's not necessarily a matter of resources. To me, it's a matter of having that backbone infrastructure organization that can sort of coalesce all of the resources that are out there. Make sure that we're moving in the same direction, that programs are supporting each other and leveraging each other rather than duplicating services. Because I can even say that in my field of higher ed, I see a lot of duplication of things that are out there. And I think moving forward, we can't do that. We have to become more effective of collaborating and navigating this resource landscape. So, yeah. Yes? Yeah. Yeah, so I should say, so there is another program called BEAD, and I'm going to butcher what it stands for, but it's basically...
Turn it over to Christine. I have a question for you. So One of our topics today is going to be scams and whatnot. Question for the audience. Facebook page, Nashua, New Hampshire. What do you think? You are invited to pick up free food tomorrow, the 23rd, from 9:30 to 6. You can pick up for yourself on behalf of somebody else. Register on our portal below with a very weird sounding URL. What do you think? Scam or real? Scam? Hands? Scam. Don't click on it. And there's a couple of them like that. So it's you got to be careful these days. Christina, the floor is yours. Do you want me to click around for you, or are you going to do it yourself?
I'll do it.
Okay. Pull up your slides. Go.
Awesome. Okay, I'm good with this. All right, hello everyone. I'm happy to be here today and wanted to explain first why AARP is involved in this topic. And one reason is because older adults are one of the target populations for the Digital Equity Act. But it's also because working on digital access is really critical to our mission. And our mission is to empower people to choose how they live as they age. We do that in a number of ways. We have various ways that we're involved in building stronger communities. We advocate for issues that matter to people 50 and older and their families, and we provide education and resources on a variety of topics. Before I get into my presentation, I want to share with you the story of one of my friends. Her name's Mitzi. She has known my parents since before they were married. She's known me my entire life. She's currently 91 years old, spry, still lives in her second floor apartment. She knows a lot, is familiar with a lot. She does not have a smartphone. She does not have a computer. She does not have internet access. And she knows what she's missing. So she, for example, went to a store, was looking for something. They didn't have the right size of the top she was looking for or something. And the shopkeeper said to her, "Oh, you can go online and order that." And she said, "No, I can't." She can't do that. And in our world, increasingly, our stores are going away. And the assumption is that when you need something, you can go online and get it. She had I don't remember if it was she had a broken foot or she had some other reason why she couldn't drive. And a friend, she lives in Washington, D.C., a friend of hers who lives out in Maryland said, "Oh, I want you to come visit me." And Mitzi said, "Well, I can't because I can't drive right now." And the woman said, "It's okay, you can get an Uber." And Mitzi said, "No, I can't. I don't have a smartphone. You can't do Uber without a smartphone." And so that access or lack of access to the internet can be really isolating. It feels like, and it's true, that you can't participate in society the way that you would like to. So social isolation is so damaging to people's health, to their physical health, their mental health, and just their ability to connect with the world. So in this presentation, I just want to give some context about the older population in New Hampshire, about access to the internet in various ways. I'll review how we've already talked a lot. Charlie covered it, Mike covered it. What are some of the ways that the internet access can help people? And I want to talk about that specifically in the context of one of AARP's big priorities, which is helping people to age in the community if that's what they want to do and that's what their health allows them to do. So age in the community rather than needing to go into a nursing home. And there are lots of ways that our system sort of pushes people towards nursing home care rather than care in the community. In fact, if you look at the percentage of public funding that goes into long-term care in to nursing home care in each state, so the percentage of government money that's going into nursing home care versus home and community-based services, New Hampshire ranks dead last. only 14% of our funding, our public funding, goes towards home and community-based services. So that's one of the things that AARP focuses on, and digital access is one of the things that can really help to keep people at home as long as they want to be there, and can help family caregivers assist them in that effort. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about what AARP is doing in this regard. All right, we have two graphs here that give information about the aging of the population. So on the left, there are 3 lines. The top line is the population 85 and older, middle line is 65 and older, and the bottom line is 50 and older. And this graph goes from 2020 to 2050. And the left graph shows it's essentially the rate of change over time. And so it shows that the percentage of the population 85 and older is climbing dramatically over the next 50 years, 40, 50 years. And the size of the 50-plus population isn't growing, that's the bottom line, is basically flat. And the 65 and older population is going to grow a lot in the next few years, but not nearly as much as the population 85 and older. So that's growth rates. On the right is just the share of the population that are in these 3 different age groups. So on the left, population 50 and older, middle 65 and older, right 85 and older. So by 2050, 46% of the population will be over the age of 50, and 27% over the age of 65, 7% over the age of 85. So currently, New Hampshire is one of the oldest populations in the country, and that's going to continue. And people over the age of 65 in particular, these are the folks who are having the most trouble, the age group that's having the most trouble when it comes to digital access. This graph shows the percentage of people who use the internet by age. So the far left is total. So this is 2013 versus 2023. So in 10 years overall, 71% of the population in 2013 had access to the internet or used the internet, and that increased to 83% in 10 years. So these numbers are a little lower than I would have thought. I thought internet use was higher than that, but that's what we have. Then the 3 other lines, we have age 25 to 44, 45 to 64, and then 65 and older. And just as you would expect, as you get older, fewer people are using the internet. One thing that really struck me about this graph, though, is if you look at people 65 and older, their usage of the internet increased dramatically in the 10 years between 2013 and 2023. And so there is, I think we need to keep in mind that there is hope here, there is movement here, and it's possible to increase access to the internet, and how people are using it. So even though there's been this big growth in the usage of the internet among the population 65 and older, there's still 23% of folks in that age group who don't use the internet. It's one of them, but there are plenty more. And that's what, when we talk about digital access, those are the people, that's one aspect of what we're looking at is usage of the internet, and the part of that is how to use the internet, like do they know that? And this is the final graph that I'm going to show you today. AARP did a study where we asked people, do you feel confident that you have the skills you need to take full advantage of being online? So the previous graph talked about, do you use the internet ever, essentially? This is about, do people feel capable? And again, you can see that this is showing the leftmost bar is showing the total population 50 and older. So only 2/3 of people 50 and older have that confidence. And then this is going, as you go across, it's age 50 to 59, all the way up to 80 and older. And as you might expect, confidence declines over time or as people age. As I said at the beginning, I want to focus on the benefits of digital access as it relates to people being able to age in place. And this is important, as I said, it can empower independence and empower people to live at home as long as they are able. And that helps them. It helps the system because people aging in their homes costs a lot less than people being in nursing homes. And it also helps family caregivers facilitate care for their loved ones. So there are a few different things that I want to touch on. One is if you have access to smartphones, tablets, things like that, there's social connection, so you can, see pictures of your grandkids and understand, learn about what your friends and family are doing. There's also the access to telehealth. There's information. Then there are capabilities, so people who have some limitations, there's text-to-speech options and things like that. There's smart home systems, so if somebody with mobility issues, if they have a smart home system set up and they know how to use it, that can help people if they have mobility impairments. Maybe they can go and adjust the thermostat without having to take that effort or risk of falls to go to the thermostat. They can control the lights. They can make sure that the stove is turned off, things like that. Hearing loss. Some of these smart systems can convert sounds into sensations, so that can help somebody stay at home longer. Remote health monitoring can make it so people don't have to travel to a doctor's office to check their blood pressure and other kinds of vital signs like that, and reducing the need for transportation is key because we all know that it can be tough. There's not a lot of public transportation here, and so transportation is a big barrier. Medication management, and sensor technology. There are sensors that can monitor people's gait because changes in gait can be a real indicator that something dramatic is going to happen with somebody's health. There are lots of other sensors. There's like smart forks, essentially, that can detect if somebody is eating and kind of eating well. You can have toilet seats that can detect if somebody has used the toilet in a certain amount of time or opened the refrigerator, things like that. So that's good for like peace of mind for people who are family caregivers living elsewhere. It can also be peace of mind for somebody in the home that they want to make sure that if something happens, somebody knows about it. It can also be used in a way, though, that is really takes away people's privacy and dignity. If they don't know they're being monitored, that's a problem. But that's a discussion for another day. In terms of barriers, when you ask people why is it that you don't use the internet, you don't have a device, things like that, older folks are more likely than younger folks to be worried about privacy. Older people, when we ask them, they are not clear on what they can do with this kind of technology and how it could help them. I don't know how many of you, I only learned a few months ago about Google Images, where you can take a picture of something and Google will tell you what it is. So whether it's like identifying a flowers, like, I want to plant that, what is it? I saw somebody's shoes recently, and I was like, I love your shoes. What are they? And I took a picture of them and was able to figure it out. So I didn't know that the internet could do that for me, and that's really just kind of fun. But there are a lot of, as we've said, there are a lot of benefits that people don't know about. They don't know what they're missing, and they're not sure that how much they would use the technology makes the cost of it worth it. And we know that cost is a barrier. And finally, there's ease of use. So they're worried about how they would get it set up. How would they get support if they run into a problem? Right now, most of the time, if you buy a tech device, it doesn't come with written instructions. You're given a QR code or something to go online, and that can be disconcerting for people. And they're like, what is this? Like, why don't I have an instruction book that I can look at? And then there are design issues in terms of font, the frequency of updates where it like changes what the icons look like and how you do things. So those are all some barriers. And then what we need broadband access. Charlie was talking a little bit about the physical infrastructure. We need it to be affordable. People need digital skills, and that's what we're focused on a lot today. And then inclusive design. So understanding how older people in general are using these devices and kind of what they need. One thing I just want to point out is, I had the notion that there are people who grew up without the internet, without smartphones, lots of them. And so I thought, well, maybe as those people get older and kind of move on to what comes next, that maybe we'd be all set. People would know, had been using the technology, most people, for their whole lives, and maybe this digital skills wouldn't be such a problem, that we kind of grow out of it. But somebody who's at the MIT Age Lab pointed out to me that new technology is coming out all the time. And while this move to smartphones and the internet and things like that was huge, a huge disruptor, more is going to come along. And maybe AI is one of those things. Like as that's being incorporated more and more into our world, that's going to be another thing that people don't know how to use, or some people don't know how to use, and that we're going to need to address. AARP has spent a lot of time over the years working on digital access. Some of you may remember about 15 years ago, there was a move from analog television signals to only digital broadcasting. And so if you had a really old TV, that TV was going to stop working. And so AARP worked a lot, spent a lot of time and money trying to let people know about that this change was coming and get converters so that they wouldn't lose access to the television. And that was a big source of information 15 years ago. So we do advocacy at the state and federal level on these topics, have been involved with the BEAD program and the Digital Equity Act. And there are a few other things I want to talk to you about. So one is Older Adults Technology Services. This is a nonprofit organization that was founded in New York City and was providing, it's dedicated to teaching people about how to use technology, focused on older adults. So they work with organizations, towns, states across the country on broadband expansion and digital opportunity, focused on what we're focused on today, which is meaningful access to the internet. They do reports and publications, they provide thought leadership around the world, and then they have a signature program called Senior Planet. And this is their practical, how are we gonna make this actually happen program. So they have a hotline that is available 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, where people can call and say, like, I just got a smart TV, and I do have a Netflix subscription, but I don't know how to sync these things up. Resetting passwords, things like that. And so the people who answer those phones are likely to be more patient than a lot of us when our parents call us with technical issues. So they do online classes that are live. They do have on-demand learning. They have a licensing program that United Way of Greater Nashua is involved with, where it's a sort of train-the-trainer model so that the curriculum that Senior Planet has developed can be shared more broadly. And then AARP New Hampshire, the past couple of years, we have had a small pot of money to try to increase digital access. This year, we worked mostly with libraries, and they did a variety of things, offering classes and one-on-one support, teaching people about digital basics, online safety, artificial intelligence, so kind of the 101 there. And then we also provided some devices, last year helped a senior center reestablish a computer lab. Some libraries are getting hotspots that they can loan out, and there's one library who they got an Android phone because all the library staff had iPhones, and people would come in with their Android device, the staff didn't know how to help them. So they got an Android device so they can learn and be able to support their patrons. So support for libraries in promoting digital access is key. So I want to thank you for your attention. I'm really glad to be here. This is my contact information, and I look forward to taking any questions as we're as part of the panel. Is that
Yeah,
what you want?
we also have time for a question or two now if anybody
sure.
would like to ask. I'm going to ask you, raise your hand. I bring you the microphone so that we can also get it to the broadcast. There you go.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for being here. I guess I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but it seems to me that the solutions that you have for the elderly that aren't comfortable with or knowledgeable with the internet still seem to be like things that you have to access on the internet. So, as amazing as the internet may be, I know that me personally and most of the elderly community, they don't understand any of this. And I feel like even though we're getting these resources, we're taking the human factor out of these services. So when you're an elderly person and you're confused and you're anxious, the first thing you're thinking is not making a phone call to a hotline to a stranger that's not going to understand the state of confusion or mind that you're in. So I'm just wondering if there are any forward-thinking programs that would actually involve volunteers or human beings that would go and work with the elderly, or even go into their homes and help them connect devices or understand like what a smart TV would be, where they could possibly not have to pay for cable every month, but maybe get one app where it could save them, $200 a month.
Yeah. I think you raise a really important point there. And because I think one of the biggest barriers to improving digital literacy and digital access is that it's a one-to-one training a lot of the time. And it's not just once. You can't just go in and show somebody this is how you do email, this is how you search the internet. This is what those like 3 horizontal lines mean on a website. Like we all know that's what you click, or most of us know, I think that's what you click if you want to know what's on a website. So even if somebody gets access to the internet, wants to use it, you can't teach them just once. So it's one-to-one assistance, and it's one-to-one assistance multiple times. And that's one of the reasons I think the libraries are so important, because they can, and if they can provide and do provide currently that assistance, and providing them more resources is important. So I definitely hear what you're saying. I think there's a range of skill levels out there, and so we need a range of ways to try to promote this digital equity, digital access.
I'll walk it down to you. 1 second.
Thank you. So I had a question that's in some ways parallel, and it has to do with loneliness. And I think for a lot of, especially older people, in my experience, a lot of the things that are being replaced right now with the internet, like going to the bank, were little opportunities for kind of little micro connections on a daily basis as part of one's routine. And we have new opportunities for digital connections, but those kind of face-to-face connections that people have with those little daily routines that are now being replaced digitally are going away.
Yep.
And I'm curious, have you any thoughts about that or ways of addressing that?
I definitely see the problem, and definitely share that concern, is that those social isolation is about not having any, so it's not just loneliness, it's about not interacting with anyone. And that seeing people, being in the same area of people, with people is super important for people not being isolated. And so I think it's a real it's a real concern, and it's part of why AARP is focused on, we do a lot of things, but one of them is trying to build stronger communities and shared outdoor spaces, and make it possible for people to leave their house and be somewhere safe and get around so that they can interact with people. And so there's, we do some and we try to do a lot, but there's a limit to what we can do as an organization, but that's the kind of thing we really want to promote.
Okay, 1 second.
You have one more question? Okay. All right. Good morning. I'm Sandra Pratt from Gateways Community Services. I am a bilingual service coordinator there. And my question is for everyone because I am also part of a faith community here in Nashua. And we have a Brazilian church inside of American church. We have a few. So we have like the old kind of fashion translation style. And I went to Orlando, and there's this website, the app there, Listen Wi-Fi. It's great. You download on your phone. You get the the headsets, and someone is talking and translating simultaneously. But I'm looking for something that would need a person, like it would be translated like immediately. I don't know if that exists and if it's possible for that to happen. But I think that would be great. My husband is American and he goes to the Brazilian church, so that's the opposite. And he does have like the Google Translate, so he has to read because it's reading, right? It's someone is talking, and then even on a slide, it translates like right away. If he points the camera, he has that app. But I was wondering if there is an app, if everybody knows, that would not need someone to be translating.
Yeah.
That.
Something to automatically translate?
Yes.
Yes, there are.
Is that an app?
It's built into a lot of the phones, but I can help you with that.
Oh, thank you. That's it. That's my problem solved. Thank you.
Thank you, John and Sandra. So you guys can connect. We're going to actually give you the opportunity to do that right now. I'm going to give everybody a 5-minute break. We have a little bit of time before we have our next speakers. Our next speaker is going to be Peter LaRoche. We're going to begin promptly in 5 minutes. I want to tell you the next presentation is going to be fantastic. It's going to be about primarily internet security. So before you take your break, I have a quick question. And should I click on this link or not? Old pet store closing, giving away all pet food for free. Small pet shop closing down. There's still a bunch of leftover stock, and all you need to do is click to register here. Scam, should I click? I don't know. All right. I will see you all in 5 minutes. Take a quick break, get some coffee, and we'll be right back. All right, our next speaker from our panel today is Peter LaRoche. Peter has a really impressive title, I have to say. There's a lot of credentials here, but the most important thing is that Peter is a network intrusion forensic analyst. So I'm going to say try that a couple of times fast with the United States Secret Service. And essentially, Peter is our cybersecurity expert today. So, Peter, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it from there.
Thank you. Again, my name's Pete. I work out of the Manchester office of the Secret Service, and my primary job is the investigation of cyber, or I'm not a big fan of the term cyber, but for lack of a better term, since that is the one most people use, cyber fraud, cyber scams, internet-enabled fraud, internet-enabled scams. However, another big portion of my job is education. I do a lot of outreach, such as today. Last night I spoke to a group of seniors about the various dangers that are faced online and the common scams we see. I'm not going to present a lot of figures, but this one is off the Internet Crime Complaint Center, or IC3. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but the FBI runs a website, ic3.gov, where people can go and report various scams, whether it's mail scams, internet, mostly though it's going to be internet-enabled scams that are online. There's a lot of tinfoil hat stuff on there. I have the ability to look through it, and I tell people you're not necessarily going to, it's a good idea to go make a report, and that's also any victims of scams. I do strongly recommend they do that. However, you're not necessarily going to get a call back from the FBI the next day. They do keep track of the information, and what they, big source of what they produce is statistics on trends and what's happening. So I just like this one because this pretty much verifies the most common complaints we get and the most common scams that I investigate. And number one last year was the investment frauds, which I'll talk a little bit about, kind of more than just the aging population, affects a wide swath of people from all different demographics. Business email compromise, which I'm not going to get into, but that's the other half. I think a large portion of the presentations and the outreach I do are, I'd say, half to businesses and municipalities, really geared towards that idea of the weaponizing email with the intent of ACH or wire fraud. The other half of the outreach I do is mainly to the aging population. And I'll admit that until I really started speaking to this group and working with them, I didn't really think about the other half of it. It was mostly geared towards seniors and educating seniors, but it's the other population that, you know, just hasn't had access to the internet and I guess suffers from the same vulnerabilities that the seniors would, because obviously it's not a lack of life experience, it's not a lack of intelligence that might get them in trouble, it's the lack of experience with technology. So honestly, that's something that I haven't thought about, but I see it affecting all those groups for the same reasons. The third one listed up there, tech support scams, I put under a greater umbrella of impersonation scams, and especially seniors, and again, applying it to groups that haven't had access to internet services, connected services. I see that being the biggest threat to them, and that's what we see. Because they just don't know. They don't know what people are capable out there. They don't know how their computer, their laptop, their phone can be weaponized against them, and all the different myriad of scams that are out there. Down a little lower corner here, the other box that I put around is cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin, the Kleenex of cryptocurrency, so we'll just refer to it as Bitcoin. That's just the number, 9.3 billion, that all these scams, the people that reported cryptocurrency-enabled part of the scam. So I was talking to Christina, and let me see, there we go. In preparation for this, we were talking how some of the facts and figures between different places that report, because the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, also has a reporting mechanism that people can go to report frauds, and I recommend they go to both of them to do it. They represent some different numbers, and this one is purely the number of complaints and the amount of loss reported, and you can see 60 plus is, you know, significantly. I don't need to highlight that. You can see that's a significant point in there. And again, I don't necessarily think it accounts for age. I just think it accounts for the inexperience with connected devices in the connected world. And that's why really, you know, a lot of the investigation I do is unfortunately reactive. A lot of times it's too late to get people's money back. We do have some successes, we do run it down, but a lot of these scams are run by foreign actors outside of the United States from countries that aren't necessarily friendly or cooperative with the United States. And that's why I think the best bang for our buck, and we've decided, is the outreach, is stopping these things before they happen. And again, when kind of related to cryptocurrency, we've seen a lot of the scams. It's the new gift cards. So instead of sending people to Target to get a bunch of gift cards or the Apple Store, commonly it's down to the Bitcoin ATM at their local Cumberland farms to deposit their cash. But it's really all these different scams. Back it up one. I don't need a dramatic pause between each one coming up, but it's. When I present, like I presented last night, I'll kind of run through these different scams and just make them aware of different things. I mean, the grandchild in trouble scam, rather, is something that's starting to gain a little more recognition, or people have heard of it. They think it's their grandchild calling, and it's scrambled on the phone. They got arrested in Mexico for getting in an accident, and whatever the case, and they need to send them some Bitcoin to get out of jail. But really, all these things work a little bit differently, but the message I like to give when I give presentations is, There's a million different ways these scams can work. They can pretend they're especially the impersonation scams overarching the tech support scams. They can pretend they're the IRS, they're the local police, you have a warrant for your arrest, you need to pay money. You don't need to come turn yourself in, you need to pay money, and you need to usually pay it in Bitcoin. They'll pretend they're the FTC. That seems to be a favorite we find with a lot of the scammers. The sheriff's department, the IRS, they're ICE, what have you. Of course, the pop-ups is a big one on the computer, and they're Microsoft, they're Apple, and you call this number, and it's never as simple as that. Your bank account is hacked, and so on and so forth. But what I tell people is, there's a million different ways these scams can go. Don't try to memorize all of them, and I'm not going to tell you about every single one I've seen. Just know what the end goal is, and that's to get your money. So you really got to work backwards. Like, okay, let me see. How can I figure out if this is legitimate? And they're after my money in the end. This I'm just going to just briefly touch on because as I've explained, the impersonation scams, the tech support scams are numbers-wise the biggest thing we've seen. So educating people about those are a key. However, the biggest losses of money that we see are in the romance and investment scams. There's a term that specifically describes a new type of scam that's evolved, but it's really a combination of multiple scams called pig butchering. That's what the bad guys call it, and that's what we refer to it as. But essentially, it's combining a romance scam where you build up that trust, and then cryptocurrency investments are introduced, and the person is induced to start investing. They're usually presented with a website where they can actually see the growth they think of these assets, whereas what really happened is every time they send money, it's long gone. But the bad guys can stand up websites to show their investments growing and growing, and they get them to put in more and more money. They get them to mortgage their houses, to withdraw all their funds from retirement, to take loans out and invest it in this. And in the end, they're never going to get a dollar of that back. So again, just another scam, but we need to educate people in the idea of if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And those slides are just what I was talking about. What I like to tell people too, and I think is important if people have very little experience with connected devices or the internet use, is you just need to think about your experience in life. If something seems weird, if it doesn't seem right, you may not be well versed on the internet, but you got to trust your gut. It's probably not going to be right. There's the whole thing about kidnapping. It's like, don't go to a second location, whatever you do, if you get kidnapped. You got to do everything you can not to go to a second location. I say it's kind of the same thing with these scams, because they're always trying to get you to a second location, to a second platform. If you take something simple like a puppy scam on Facebook, you're going to buy a puppy, and you respond to an ad, and now they want you to start chatting on WhatsApp, or they're trying to move you to a different payment platform that's strange. You're just trying to send somebody Venmo, but they want to go to something else, or they want you to go take cash out and send it to a Bitcoin. I mean, those are the things that, regardless of what you know about connected devices, how the internet works, it's like if that's not how it would operate in real life. I mean, think about going to buy a shirt and they tell you, yes, we'll sell you this shirt, but you got to meet me in 10 minutes behind the building to sell you this shirt, and I'll be wearing a paper bag on my head. And it's just kind of the general thing. If it doesn't seem right, you're not closing a deal with a multi-million-dollar business. Walk away. It's ask somebody else. And the thing with scammers is they try to introduce that urgency to people. So I think those little warning signs are something that, when I present, I tell people about. Again, I don't go over every single aspect of every single scam, but it's the things like the introducing that it's got to be done now, it's got to be done now. That's what they're counting on, to short circuit somebody's decision-making process. So the tech support scams, particularly under the umbrella of those impersonation scams, are something we see large numbers of. And it does affect seniors disproportionately. And again, could affect anybody who doesn't have familiarity with the internet and how it works and connected devices and different apps. One of the things I say is whatever you do, again, going back to this doesn't seem right, stick with your gut feeling, is do not, whatever you do, let somebody talk you into installing something on your system that allows them to gain access to your system. Because in these tech support scams, That's usually what the bad guy's trying to do. And the reason they're trying to do that is to get access to everything on your system. They're going to get you to log into your bank account. They're going to then take control of it. And a particular version of this, everybody's probably got those emails from the Geek Squad saying, thank you for your payment of $250, or thank you for renewing your membership to Norton Antivirus. Well, you call that number that's in the email, they're going to try to get you to install one of these, they're going to tell you they're going to refund that $250, all of a sudden $25,000 or $2,500 is going to appear in your account. They're going to pretend they accidentally over-refunded you that. In reality, what happened, they are able to blank out your screen once they got you to log into your account, and they actually transferred that excess money from your home equity line of credit or from your savings account to your checking account. And then they give you a sob story about how they accidentally entered too many zeros, refunded you too much money, now they're going to get fired, and they get all these kids that are going to starve, and blah, 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 blah. And they get people to actually go to their bank, take out the cash, and send it to them from a Bitcoin machine down at Cumberland Farms. That's the common flow of how we see these happen. So again, that goes back to, does any of this really make sense? Even if you're not familiar with this, does that really make sense? Does it make sense that cash would instantaneously appear in your account? And one victim actually told me she did this, and she was a victim of it, went to her bank, took out $25,000 in cash. It was really her own money transferred from her home equity line of credit. The bank was saying to her, hey, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? Yep. She's on the phone the whole time with the scammer who's telling her you can't tell anybody for a myriad of various reasons. But she said, if the bank ever said to me, hey, do you know $25,000 was transferred from your home equity line of credit this morning? That would have keyed her off to the fact that this was done. So again, it's just, I like to present these different scenarios to different groups when I give talks to them, so it starts them thinking about different things they could encounter, because I'm never going to be able to hit on every possible scam that's out there. And this is just an example. It's things that are perpetrated over social media, whether it's puppy scams, whether it's selling something and you need to, like giving away a free piano, but you got to pay the shipping. Nothing's for free. It'd always be suspicious of quote unquote free stuff, whether it's a free iPhone, a free piano, a free puppy, but you got to pay the shipping charges. Same thing with scam e-commerce sites. When people, I think, first start getting access to the internet, they start to go on and they see these great deals and they say, wow, I've been missing this all along. I could have bought those Timberland boots for 50% of what I've been paying in the store. Well, teaching people about that is key. Everything they see online, even if it seems to be a good deal, probably is not real. It's going to take them to a fake e-commerce website that's very easy to stand up. It's going to steal their credit card numbers. It's used to process other stolen credit card numbers against. And I know I'm flying through these slides fast. I usually do this in an hour and go slowly through it, but hopefully anything you see, when the questioning period comes up, feel free to ask. And these are just kind of a summary of what I give to people. Again, the big picture is keep in mind, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Trust your gut. And especially when it comes to people who aren't familiar with things, have somebody you can ask. When somebody says, oh, my mother or father constantly asks me if this is a scam or that's a scam, I mean, good. That's what we want. Somebody that actually asks and doesn't get caught up in the scam.
So I knew that this was going to be one of those sections that has lots of questions. I'm sure that there's a lot of interest in this. So Peter, I'll ask the first question. Should I be sad, mad, or disappointed that I've never been targeted by a romance scam? I almost did fall for the piano scam, by the way. So all the time, yeah. Okay, now I feel better. Okay, first question is, okay. Let me take that down. What? Just 1 second. You're not loud enough for the TV.
So I just had a question. So when my client gets that email that says go down and buy gift cards because you need these gift cards, I always wonder, how do they get the money? How do they get the gift card? Because I want to explain it to the client to avoid it. Plus, I just had a client that got sent two $10,000 checks and took them to the bank to cash them. I still don't know how that works, and they get the money. I guess they deposit it, and then they get the money from the client somehow. But with the gift cards, I never understood, go buy some gift cards. Okay, I went and bought some gift cards. Now, do they tell you to send them to you? Like, how does that work?
what they'll usually do is have them scratch off the back and then take pictures of it and send it to them, because they don't actually need the physical gift card. They just need the numbers that are protected on the back. So that's usually what happens, is they send them the picture of the gift card. And it's usually cleared out within minutes, because we get those not as much anymore because of cryptocurrency. It's much easier to send somebody to a Bitcoin ATM with cash. But and it still happens. I mean, Apple products are highly marketable around the world. So if they can get somebody to buy an Apple gift card and send them that's very valuable. However, like I was saying, they clear it out in minutes. It's when we've done follow-ups on it and contacted the companies, the funds are usually gone within minutes off the card. Well, I mean, again, as I kind of quickly went through here, could be any number of scams. It could be, when you get, depending what the email, the pretext is in it, but I've seen everywhere from, this is the Nashua Police Department, there's a warrant for your arrest, go get Target gift cards if you don't want to get arrested, and give us the number on the back. And then it's, I think also I've seen those target foreign individuals living in the U.S. because they don't know. Many come from countries where maybe that does happen. So I tell people with a lot of these scams, you receive the call, you receive the email, call a trusted individual, or even call your local police department. And especially in the case of, this is your local police department, you have a warrant for your arrest, okay, and then call your local police department. Another thing I warn them about is especially incoming calls can appear to be from anybody. Most people in this room probably know it's easy to spoof a caller ID coming in, so they can look like the police department. I've had people say they got a call from 911 coming in. They'll go on the FTC's website, and when they call pretending to be the FTC, they have the FTC's phone number, and they'll also say, oh, this is Assistant Chairman X of the FTC. You can go on the website and see this is the number, and that's me on there. So yeah, so it could be any number of scams where they have to get out of whatever trouble they're supposedly in financially or legally by sending gift cards.
Thank you. Let's take two more quick questions.
Thank you for being here. My name is Iraida from the Public Health Department, and my question is about scams through text and how to get rid of them, because sometimes, or most of the times, it's very hard to get rid of those texts. Even though you try to block them, they come back again and again. And especially people that is not very technological or technologically challenged, they really get aggravated and frustrated, myself included, trying to get rid of those scams. I know they are scams, and I try to educate others. But when you get scams like you owe money for your Easy Pass, or IRS this is your final call. So some people really get scared. And thank you for your comment about it's good that the elderly people keeps calling and asking you about it. Is this a real scam? Because that's the type of conversation that we need to continue going and normalize it, so they don't feel ashamed about continue asking that question.
Yes, text messages are tough. Phone calls are easier. I recommend everybody, for the most part, for phone calls, incoming phone calls on both iPhones and Android phones, you can turn on basically the feature that it'll only ring if it's one of your contacts. And if it's an unknown number, it'll go straight to voicemail. And I say, if it's somebody that really needs to reach you, they'll leave a voicemail. Texts are a little more difficult because those are harder to block. When you delete them on iOS, it'll say, delete or report as spam or report as a scam, which you can do. But as you mentioned, it's super easy to just pop up another number. And whether this is UPS, you have a package that's delayed, click here, blah, 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 or this is, you missed this toll, you're going to be arrested unless you pay this toll fine. Or, as I mentioned, hello, how are you? Or, it was great seeing you last night, we should do that again. They want you to reply back and say, wrong number, who's this? And then the majority of those lead into that pig butchering scam. That's what they're trying to do, because it's, generally guys that are going to be the victim of that, and lo and behold, they're going to receive a attractive female picture from an attractive female that's like, hey, sorry I got your wrong number, but here's a picture of me, let's start a relationship, and it goes from there. I guess so a long way to answer your question. it's very hard when it comes to text to just block them. I would just give the overall thing. If you don't recognize the number, don't respond. Don't say it's a wrong number. Don't anything. If it's somebody that really wants to get a hold of you, I mean, one, if I was texting somebody that didn't have my number, I wouldn't just say, hey, how you doing? I'd say, hey, it's Pete. This is my new number, blah, blah, blah. We met this place. So I would say err on the side of caution. You can give them. Don't respond back to anything. If it's somebody that really they know is trying to get a hold of them, they'll send them another text. That is really what it comes down to, I guess.
One final question. Oh, over here.
So I have a client that he believes he's in a relationship with the girl from The Big Bang Theory. And he actually sent his phone to somebody. So like I went into his Google account and I found that the phone was still actively attached to his Gmail. So I disconnected it, but he keeps believing her and giving her all this information. And he now believes that the U.S. Treasury, because he was scammed out of his Social Security check for almost 2 years. And so now he has a payee, so they don't have access to his funds, but they are still coming at him. He thinks that the U.S. Treasury is calling him, texting him on like WhatsApp or one of these Zanga app, and that he's being pressured to like get information and send them stuff. But like, I just don't know how to get him to understand that these are all scams, that like PayPal doesn't text, Chime doesn't text, the U.S. Treasury is not gonna text you on these apps. So do you have any advice for that?
Obviously, sometimes, unfortunately, it's really tough. I mean, I do a lot of, we call them knock and talks. I go out with one of the FBI agents. I go out with members, the victim witness advocates from the formerly Bureau of Elder and Adult Services, now the BAAS, and go and talk to these people, whether they're identified through intake information coming in, reports from caregivers or what have you about possible elder abuse or self-neglect, or it comes in kind of, we find them proactively too through different sources. Banks, financial institutions report that they might be victims of scams. So we'll go out and talk to them, and we have good success in convincing them, but there have been some people that no matter what, can't convince. You know, I'm not a social worker. I'll work with them and go out with them and lend my expertise to talk to them. But it's tough, particularly if it's, fits the pig butchering style. There's a lot of great YouTube videos out there about scams. Not just that, but scam victims talking. And I'll send those links to people before I talk to them, say, hey, visit these links, kind of educate yourself and learn about it. And some of those links, it's like a template for what I hear every time with these scams. And you hope that somebody watching it would say, okay, but in cases they certainly won't. We have a lot of celebrity impersonate, and it kind of falls under the impersonation scam too, where impersonating celebrities, and people legitimately believe that celebrity is in love with them, wants to do business with them, whatever the pretext is. So I would just, one, if it goes up the chain to BAS and reported as self-neglecting elderly, they'll do an intake and they'll go out and actually speak to them. But I've also had those like 20-something-year-olds that thought they were talking to Johnny Depp. So that certainly wasn't a, issue with, being elderly. It was just an issue with, believing something they shouldn't.
Thank you for the great question. And Peter, thank you for this presentation. Peter will be around for the forum as well. So we started with Charlie from UNH Cooperative Extension, big picture where we are as a state. Christina talked about one of those very specific subgroups in our state, the elderly. Transitioning away from that, talking about cybersecurity and scams. Now we're going to talk about community resources, specifically in our community. I'm going to start with Amanda Blair. Amanda, could you come up? Amanda is the reference librarian, one of the reference librarians at the Nashua Public Library, one of our fabulous community partners in helping to do this work in our community. And are you going to walk and talk or talk and click, or how do you want to do this?
Oh, we'll take the mic and see where we end up.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mike. All right, so as Mike said, my name's Amanda. I'm one of the reference librarians at the Nashua Public Library. So we're just gonna talk a little bit about some of the resources we have, and that's both digital resources, databases, things like that, and also the actual devices that we have available for anyone to use. So just little briefly, we have been serving Nashua for a very long time, since 1868 in one way or another. And you know, a big part of our mission is opportunity to explore and learn without barriers. And obviously, as we're talking about in this context, that very much includes digital barriers. So, you know, as the technology in the world and what people need evolves, so does what the library is offering in order to keep up with those needs. So a lot of our technology services that we have are available to anyone, whether or not they have a library card. And I'll talk a little bit about who gets a library card and what that does for you. But we do have a lot of services that are available regardless of if you live or work in Nashua. That includes our public computers. We have a number of computers that are available, you know, desktop computers for anyone to use. You can have up to 3 hours a day. In a perfect world, you could have, you know, unlimited, but it's just the demand for it. So those are extremely popular. People come in and use them, and we do have our reference staff available for, you know, assistance for people who, a lot of people come up to us and say, I need to do this, I need to use a computer, I have absolutely no idea. You know, 10 times a day, someone comes up and says, I'm computer illiterate, can you help me? So we have both the computers and staff available to help to use them. We have our Wi-Fi that's free, open to the public, and it's pretty good. So for those who aren't able to access Wi-Fi at home, of course, we have a lot of really awesome community resources working to get that into people's homes. But if you don't have that, you can always come to the library and use our internet services there. We have our printing, copying, scanning, faxing. We get tons and tons of people coming for faxing. Not a lot of places do it anymore, so that's actually a huge thing that we do for people. There are some printing charges, but faxing, scanning, that's all free. So that's available. And then we have a variety of education opportunities. So we have some computer classes, we do one-on-one tech help, and then we do always, again, have our reference staff on hand for, you know, little questions and things that we can kind of help with in the moment. Really briefly, you can get a library card if you live or work or go to school in Nashua. Again, you don't need a library card to access most of our resources. It essentially just means you have borrowing privileges. So that could be books, DVDs, magazines. You would also get access to our research databases outside of the library. One thing that I'll be talking about is our new Library of Things, and there are a lot of devices that you can check out through the Library of Things to use at home. So long as you live, work, go to school in Nashua and have a photo ID and something showing one of those three things, you can get a card and take whatever you need out. But again, regardless, you can use the services within the library. So the computer classes I mentioned, these are free and open to the public. Nobody has to register for them. Right now we're doing about 2 or 3 a month. We have been moving more towards a one-on-one tech help and focusing on that, but we do still have our computer classes. Right now, these are the classes we're offering, you know, some computer basics, Microsoft Word, Excel, the cloud, and then some of our library resources like using ebooks and the genealogy resources that we have. So again, anyone can come to those, and we are kind of always evaluating what are the needs right now, what are people looking for. So, you know, right now we're looking at particularly AI and what is the education that needs to happen around that. So we are kind of always looking at what else is a big topic right now. So you'll also see some other classes in the future, just depending on what the need is at the moment. And then the one-on-one tech help, as I said, is something that we've been focusing on more lately. These are 45-minute sessions with a reference librarian. You can do them once a month, and we can help with a number of things. So if you need help with job search, you don't know how to use Indeed, or you don't know how to format your resume, something like that, we can help with. We get a lot of people who are just, I just got this new phone and I don't know how to use it. So people can come in and we'll, help them with things like that. Sometimes, they need to back something up to the cloud and they don't know anything about that. So these are more for a specific, task that somebody needs to accomplish. Or maybe they just can't come to any of our computer classes. Maybe we're not offering the one they need that month. So, what we can't really help with is if you're having an actual hardware problem. We can't fix your iPhone for you if, that's having trouble. But if it's a matter of, you don't know how to use it and you need instruction and assistance and kind of maybe just someone to walk you through it, we're definitely available for that. You can book those online, or you can call our reference desk. We can help you find times. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of libraries now are moving towards this library of things, which is kind of exactly what it sounds like. Exactly how you would check out a book or a DVD, you can check out these different physical items. So we implemented this in the past year, and it's growing pretty quickly. And we have a lot of things in there that aren't technology related. We've got bocce ball and, stud finders and metal detectors, things like that. But in this context, we have a lot of technology that you can check out. So we've got, microphones, projectors, green screens, ring lights. If you are doing video calls and you don't have the equipment for it, we've got DVD players, CD players, PA systems, speakers, headphones, and the brand new thing that we're really excited for are our new wireless hotspots that people can check out to bring with them. So that is brand new, and hopefully helps a lot of people who are having trouble getting access at home. The library things, you do have to have a library card to check things out. But again, if you live, work, or go to school in Nashua, you can get a library card for free. And if you don't live in Nashua, many other libraries have similar programs. So, if you live in Manchester, Manchester will have a lot of the same services and things available. So you can always try, if you don't live here, your local library probably has a lot of similar programs and offerings. And this is just a really quick plug for some of the other awesome things we do. We have a lot of services that we have, meeting rooms. So if, somebody is having a Zoom job interview or something, they have spaces that they can go to do those things, or if they're having a virtual doctor's appointment, they can book a study room. Different community organizations meet there, just providing spaces. Museum passes, we get discounts and sometimes free passes for a lot of local museums and attractions. We do a ton of programs, and we do have some calendars out where you checked in if you want to see what's coming up in June. We do tons of stuff, adults, kids, teens, everybody in between. And then all of our other services, public computers, printing, copying, tech help. We are able to provide a little bit of research assistance. If you have a research question and you need help with, we can do a little bit of that for you. We have our local history room, and a lot of that's available digitally as well. We do book club services. Our free notary services, those are very popular. We have a couple notary publics available. So just lots and lots of good things going on, both in terms of digital services and everything else. So obviously we'd be happy to see you around. Yeah, that's just where we are. We're downtown, back by the river. And yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. We're going to hold questions for Amanda until we bring the full panel back up here, and I appreciate that. The library is, Nashua Public Library is such a great partner in our community and just does so much fantastic work. So, Amanda, thank you for that. Last presentation before we have the full panel come up is I'm going to talk just a little bit about what we've been doing at United Way. I just got to get where's my view and full screen. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our Tech Connect program at United Way. We started actually before this slide actually talks about, we started during the pandemic back in 2020, supporting initially the school district with a large-scale effort around Chromebooks and Wi-Fi hotspots. Initially in 2020, as schools went into remote learning, we distributed approximately 2,000 Chromebooks that were then installed with software so that kids could do remote learning. And many kids didn't have access to the internet, so we implemented a pretty large-scale Wi-Fi hotspot program. Ultimately, we distributed close to 500 hotspots throughout the community as well, so kids could go online, be online, and stay in school. Since that time, obviously, we've evolved away from that, and now we've evolved into a program of supporting people in the community who need access to their own laptop computer or a tablet-type computer, separate from what the library does, kind of in conjunction. We work together with each other. This is on the front, up on the front desk, but Charlie talked about the digital equity plan for the state. We've implemented also, or put in place a program, a digital equity plan for our community that's been built through our coalition. It's predicated on many of the same concepts as the statewide plan, so it aligns well, but it's tailored to our community. And if you want to read more about that, that's on the front desk. Also, my colleague Sarah is the perfect person to talk with if you want to learn a little bit more about our digital navigation program. The library is one of those places that has drop-in service for people. You know, if you know somebody who got their new cell phone and they just don't know how to use it, they should drop on in. We also have digital navigators throughout the community that we're recruiting in a program that we're growing constantly to provide that same service. Sarah can talk with you more about that. And then what I wanted to talk more deeply about is Tech Connect. Tech Connect is our program of taking refurbished laptop computers, configuring them, and then supporting people in the community who need that access. Is my friend Matt still in the audience? Oh, you moved. You were here, you're there. Matt is one of our volunteers for Tech Connect. He and another volunteer, myself, meet every single week with people who've signed up to receive a laptop. And since we started, we're pushing about 250 people who have already received that technology. And we'll talk about a little bit now about who they are and what they're doing with that resource. So just some data from the program. When somebody signs up for the program, we collect some basic information. We, by the way, do not ask for any verification. I don't even ask for ID. We don't ask for, income statements, tax returns, any of that. It's all on a, sort of a, we believe you, but give us some information kind of basis. So we know that about 88% of the people we're helping are individuals, and a much smaller percentage are actually supporting their families through this resource. How do people use their technology? They would identify that about 2/3 of it is for personal use, but if you add these numbers up, you'll see it adds to more than 100%. That's because people do use technology for more than one thing, right? So 2/3 of the people say they use it for personal purposes, but 40% almost use it for school, and 30% use it for work, and many use it for all three of the above. And you'll see that reflected in the survey data at the end of this presentation. Who are the people that come to us? We are passive in our approach to marketing the program, so we don't go out to specific demographics, but it's interesting to see who actually does come in is very reflective of our community. If you looked at the demographics of the Nashua region, you would find a pie chart that looks pretty similar to this. About 2/3 of the people who come identify as white, non-Hispanic, and about 17% identify as Hispanic and Latino, with the remainder being either other or Black or African American. Pretty reflective of our community. Most of the work we do is to support people who are low income, and most of the people who come to us are extremely low income. Some of our funding initially came from the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is a program of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and there is a requirement there that people be very low income in order to receive services that are HUD funded. So we actually do ask people to talk a little bit about their income. What we found is that even though the requirement is that people need to be at or below the federal poverty limit, for a family of two, that's about $22,000 a year. What we find is that, 85% of the people that come to us are actually in the first quartile of that federal poverty limit. So really very low income. That means less than $6,000 a year of income for a family of two. So what are people walking in the door? What do they look like as far as, a little bit about them? 2/3 of them are unemployed, and you'll see in the resources that people use these for, or the things people use this resource for, that employment is a huge part of the technology initiative. 1/3 are employed, and many of the people who are employed will use the resource to get further gainful employment, meaning going back to school, taking classes, or searching for a different job. We also serve heavily the recovery community. We found very early on that people in recovery in sober housing or affiliated with the drug court found us and were encouraged to do things like go back to school, find a different type of employment, connect to your families. All of those are things that people do with their technology. So we have heavily focused a lot of our work in the recovery community. 87% of the people who've come through our doors do identify as being in recovery. And again, these numbers don't add up to 100, they add up to more than 100% because many people use more than one substance that they're in recovery from. 45% from opioids, 32% from alcohol, 41% from stimulants, and many people, of course, one or more of those substances. So people in recovery are a big focus of our work, helping them to stay in recovery and to stay on their journey towards recovery. So the survey says we've gone back out to the people who've received technology and have surveyed them, and there's a live link in the data that you'll receive. So this data changes every time I pull up the screen. It's like, what's going to happen? We surveyed the 231 people who've identified an email address, and so far 30 of those people have responded. That's a pretty good response rate. That's well over 10%, which means the data that we're receiving is statistically significant. How are people using their work? Well, we said many people are unemployed. They identify as unemployed coming in the door. No surprise that 73% have identified that they've used their technology to get employment or to search for employment. 43% have used it for researching and applying for services like food stamps and fuel assistance and other sorts of services that really are very difficult to access without technology. 2/3 have used the technology to either apply for school or to go to school, and half of the people, a little over, have used it to connect to their family or friends. And we've asked for some detail. I'm not going to read through all of these answers, but some of the free text is really interesting and kind of makes me smile, to be honest. I was able to apply for schooling, and I needed a laptop for homework, so it was extremely helpful to have a laptop. I'm now graduated and working on applying for jobs. I am able to log on to training resources. I believe that nowadays electronics and the internet are tools essential for educational purposes. It was useful for me because I was able to search for job applications. After a month, my laptop stopped working. So that's good feedback for me. This person is now actually registered to get a replacement. This is refurbished technology. Sometimes it breaks. And sometimes a person breaks it. You never know, right? I've done the same myself. Indeed, resume writing, going to SNU. I've been able to do many tasks to enhance access with my laptop, etc. And you'll be able to read all of these comments in your handouts. What additional tech support do you need? We've asked people beyond the laptop, what do you need? And I think it's interesting, Amanda, many people have indicated the need for printing. And we're not sure exactly how to deal with that quite yet. So we're probably going to talk at our coalition about how do we approach that. I don't necessarily think we're going to be distributing a lot of printers, but we might be distributing some printers and finding a good way to do that that's intelligent. Many people indicate a need for another device, a cell phone or a smartphone. And of course, many people, even in our community in Southern Hillsborough County, need better internet or Wi-Fi. And then there's some questions about that as well. It would have been helpful to have a printer to connect to so I could print out study guides for school. I mean, I get that. I went to school. Reliable phone and typing skills, so there are people that want to learn more, and many other comments. Lastly, we've asked people to share a success story, and some of these are just really pretty fabulous. I felt lost and hopeless at a dead-end job that I thought I might be at forever. All the money I worked for went to my bills and feeding my children. I was helped to get a jump start that I needed in order to pursue education in the field I've always wanted. Without the help they provided, I never would have been able to do this. Thank you so much. And there are many other comments like that from people who've used the technology to their ability. Many people have also identified that they've used it to connect to their family, maybe remotely. That's great. One of the comments in there which made me smile was from a person who said they were able to go to a remote church service for the first time in many years. So you just don't ever know where these things go, but they do end up creating a healthier community. And that's all information that's available there for you. What I want to do is ask our panel to come back up. We have a little bit of time left. And I'm going to ask all of our panelists, including Charlie from our keynote, to come up to the stage, and we'll pass the microphone around and ask questions. I know Amanda and I haven't had any questions. That's okay. Christina, come on back. Peter and Charlie, welcome to the stage. And I'll just pass the mic, but let's do that by, if you raise your hand, you can ask any of the panelists any question that you would like. And we'll just kind of take it from there. We've got about 15, 20 minutes to do this, so it's not a super rush. We did want to leave time for that. First question. I know there must be at least one in the audience.
So my question was for Amanda. I thought it was pretty interesting, the things that we were able to kind of, if you have a library card, you can rent the things that you have available. I guess one of the concerns would be, especially, on my end, I work for the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter, and we know our clients. And so we just wanted to know, are you guys in fear? I have two questions. Is it renting it like a book and you get it for a certain amount of days and you got to return? And then after that, how are we knowing that if I send somebody, and not that I'm trying to talk bad about our clients, but we know them, they might disappear with that speaker. They might try to get rid of that. So I just want to know if we have certain people that you kind of know who and whatnot, stuff like that.
Yeah, so the checkouts for the library things do work like checking out a book, where you have it for a certain amount of time, and then you have to return it. I mean, the reality is, even with books and DVDs and video games, things get lost, things go missing. That's just kind of the reality, and we don't want that to keep us from, doing our best to offer what we can. And, like with a book, if you lose a book, there is, a replacement cost. Do we always get that replacement cost back? But yeah, the fact that, stuff gets lost and stuff might not necessarily come back, I don't think we want that to be a barrier to offering it, But it is, you check it out for a certain amount of time and then return it.
Hi, you talked about
having some instructional services for like the Excel or Microsoft or genealogy, and how does one access those instructional sessions? How will they know about them, and do you stop them over the summer? And you said you did like 2 or 3 per month.
Yeah, so those, they're all on our calendar, so wherever you find that. So we have physical calendars at the library. They're posted on our website. I think they go in our newsletter as well. So anywhere that you would find information on any other library event, that would be where you'd find the computer classes. Right now we're doing about 2 a month. We do them over the summer. So we don't pause them. They are in the afternoons, so they're Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. So we can't do evenings just because we just don't have the staff for it. But yeah, and if those times don't work, people can always set up a tech help instead. Is that all your questions? Okay.
So the question was about Chromebooks. I assume you're talking about Chromebooks that were distributed back during the pandemic? Yeah, so if a Chromebook during the pandemic was broken, or many of those can't be upgraded or updated anymore, we've transitioned almost completely out of that program. So I would prefer you find a different way of disposing it than bringing it to United Way, because we have to pay to dispose that just like anybody else would. But there are places like the Merrimack Rotary has a annual recycling event for technology where you can take it. But we at this point will not do anything. John, it looks like you had a comment on that as well.
Yeah, Goodwill in South Nashua has a program with Dell where they'll take any computers.
Goodwill in South Nashua. Thank you. South Hudson. Thank you, John. Good question. Thank you. Yes.
My question is for the gentleman from Secret Service.
Peter.
Can you please explain how social engineering works?
So we have a philosophy question, or let's do the microphone anyway, if you don't mind. Yeah, if you don't mind coming up. It just makes it easier for everybody to hear.
Just the definition or how it works? It's basically weaponizing people's trust in words against them. It's finding the weakness, it's just the term social engineering. There's different types of social engineering. It's whether it's over the phone, whether it's in person. It's just convincing somebody. I would say the most successful social engineering is not convincing somebody to do something that they don't want to do, but convincing them it's something they want to do and getting them to do it voluntarily. So it takes on a lot of different forms, but it's working the person. It's different than the quote unquote hacking, going into a system and hacking a system. It's really manipulating the person to do what you want them to do, but for them to believe it's something they want themselves to do is the most effective way we've seen it work. That could basically, I think that sums it up. I mean, it's used basically in a lot of different scams. I think that's the most effective way to do it. It's very basic, from just the email you get that says click here. I mean, that could classify as social engineering, to an elaborate scam like the one I described, the investment/romance scam, the idea of pig butchering. That's also social engineering, but that takes place, sometimes we've seen it over weeks, over months, where the social engineering portion of it is their end goal. Again, with most of these scams, the end goal is very simple. It's to get the money. But to get there, they're going to send you a text. Then you're going to reply back, wrong number, who's this? Then they're going to say, oh, I'm sorry, send you an attractive picture, try to engage in conversation. Then they're going to show you their supposed Facebook profile where they live in New York City, they're walking their dog, they work for some salon or own some salon, and Then all of a sudden they introduce the fact that they have made a lot of money investing in this thing called the Bitcoin, and the whole thing can be classified as social engineering because they're working towards that end goal of getting your money, and they're manipulating the victim along the way to reach that goal, if that answers your question.
I think we'll probably hear more about this in the breakout groups, but for those on the panel, it's already becoming clear how many incredible resources there are in our communities, just from the anecdotes that you all have started to share. And so this question isn't for any of you in particular, but it's really for anyone who wants to answer it. What have you found to be effective in kind of understanding and leveraging those different potentially complementary resources? And do any of you maybe have an example that you want to share of, where you were able to, maybe leverage another organization and what they were offering to, better serve the folks that you work with?
I can share that on our webpage at United Way, unitedwaynashua.org, we've created a sub-page specifically dedicated to community resources around digital technology, including those that we offer, but those that are offered by others as well as a little bit about the coalition itself and the work we're doing. It's an excellent question. I know that if you were to say call like a 211, they wouldn't probably know the answer to the question because many of the resources aren't, categorized in the database of 211. Some are, but many aren't. So that's an evolving area. And like I said, in our region, we're looking at this and trying to see what can we do to host that information ourselves. I'm sure the library is doing the same, and other, linchpins in the community, maybe the city, the municipality, et cetera. Christina, did you have a response to that?
I just want to mention that there is a resource available that people may not know about. Maybe you do. It's Aging and Disability Resource Centers. It used to be called Service Link, and their mission is to connect people with information and resources. And so if somebody were to call and say, I need to set up a smart home devices, or I need other things like to age in place or whatever, they will get you those resources and sort of, they talk about like hold your hand through it. So they're not just sending you to a phone number or a website, and they might be able to schedule somebody to come out and help you in the home. So that is a statewide resource. There's one, at least one resource center in each county. And so they provide one-on-one assistance, in-person assistance, and then also phone assistance.
Nate, I just have a quick comment to your question. I think when we wrote the digital equity plan, we envisioned having some sort of a 211-like statewide service that would incorporate information that's been collected through regional and local centers. I think one of the things we also learned is that the more we make people aware of those resources, the more those resources are utilized. And without additional resources to support that organizations and entities can become overwhelmed without additional funding. So it's just a caveat that we can build a system, raise awareness, but we have limited capacity in terms of ability to deliver those resources.
So what would you say has been So what would you say have been some of your, say, 2 or 3 most effective strategies for reaching these more underrepresented or hard to reach kind of populations?
Well, I can say in the case of our laptop and tablet program, probably the most effective strategy has been word of mouth and social media. Ironically, social media is, a digital resource, but it's also a powerful tool. Word of mouth seems to be the way people are learning mostly about our program. It's a bad answer because word of mouth is not really a marketing strategy that you can invest in, but in a community as connected as Nashua tends to be, it's also highly effective.
I would just add that for the people who are hardest to reach, and as there's a question earlier about folks who just, they're not gonna go online, they don't have that capacity, or maybe the help that is available, they're kind of, the people who are helping don't have the capacity to understand what situation they're in. But this is where family comes in a lot, where if we're able to get information to the families through social media, through other kinds of online ads and things like that, it's really expensive to send mail out, but that's the people who aren't connected, that's how they would find out. So that's really expensive. But if you're able to share information digitally with the people who do have access, and then they can share that and try to get resources into the people who don't.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
I mean, I'll give you actually an example that came up in real time. About an hour ago, I got an email from a person, good morning, Mike. In a Revive meeting with a recovery coach, I was referred today to you for obtaining a laptop to use for managing child support payments as well as continuing education. This could aid in my recovery process. Thank you, so-and-so. And so that's like not, I mean, I could tell you I haven't sent flyers to any of the recovery centers. We don't have any advertising going there. It's just purely been a word of mouth sort of an endeavor. But it's a good question and something we really need to think about. And I think Charlie's right. A more systemic approach would also make a lot of sense.
There's one here, and then I'll go.
I just had two kind of like lingering thoughts after listening this morning. My first one was with funding being eliminated for some of the services that you guys are providing to the community. I guess, are you being forward thinking and finding out ways to continue the work that you're doing by finding other, funding points? And then my second thought was about, I primarily work with children, but I'm thinking about the older community and more vulnerable populations, and with some of those individuals who are kind of like trapped, or they're giving away their life, savings for some of these scams. Are you also, in addition to connecting them with tech support professionals, are you also connecting them to like mental health providers who can also provide that wraparound support for lingering feelings about everything that they've lost?
I think we probably all are going to have answers to this question about funding and supports. I'll just kick it off, and if any of you guys want to add in, just feel free to queue on up. With our laptop program and our digital navigator program, we've built something which is, I believe, highly scalable without a lot of funding, because it's based primarily on volunteers and donations. That said, we had proposed, I'm sorry about the lights, it's like a little bit glary, but we had built a grant proposal for the digital equity funding that Charlie alluded to that would have been a partnership with UNH Cooperative Extension, would have allowed us really to address the 40,000 people in Hillsborough County who do not have access to devices and the internet. We know that that's not going to happen now. That doesn't mean we're not doing work. We're continuing to work and grow the program as much as we can. And a little bit of money goes an awful long way when you're working with donations and volunteers. So that's been kind of our approach. It's a little bootstrappy, but it's been effective as well.
I'll try to answer each of those questions. One way that Senior Planet is trying to expand their reach is through this licensing program that I referred to that United Way is involved with, train the trainers kind of thing, where it's, they can't gear up to serve the whole country, but they can try to teach people who can then reach the community. In terms of support for fraud victims, AARP has something we call the Fraud Watch Network. And part of the goal is to educate people about scams so that if our little tagline is, if you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam. So we're trying to raise awareness. But then also we have, there's an 800 number that people can call if they've been a victim of fraud that will provide support and just sympathy, support, support groups, things like that, because it's, when you're a victim of a scam, you've lost a lot of money, but you have also lost your sense of safety, your sense of self-worth often. And so you're just so right that you need more to really get back to feeling safe in the world.
Hello. So I had a question about hardware, and we were talking a lot about devices, and more just about everything we have is a device with a computer in it and connected to the internet. That's our stove, our refrigerator, our car, everything, right? So I'm curious about vendor lock-in and the costs of repair for these devices, where we used to go to an independent repair person and get it repaired pretty inexpensively. And often now we have to go back to the vendor or an authorized dealer to get something fixed. And on the flip side of that, there's right to repair laws, there's attempts to push more kind of right to repair. And when we talk about equity and the cost of ownership of these devices and maintaining them when we don't have access to the tools to repair them.
Yeah, I can tell you how we're approaching that with our laptops. As I said, those are refurbished devices. Many of those are donated. Many of those are also purchased on the refurbished secondary market. So for about $100, we can put a computer in someone's hands that has a standalone also license with Windows 10 or 11 on it, depending upon the machine. Up till now, we've also been able to include a standalone license to Microsoft Office. That's probably going to evolve into a free Office version like Libre. We look at our devices as basically one-way throwaway kind of a units. Like for $100, it doesn't make any sense for us to repair, nor do I really encourage our clients to repair them. I have had people say my computer stopped working. You know, one of the things that happens a lot is batteries die. So we always, as part of our session, setting somebody up, we'll say, you know, the battery life might not be great, just like on my laptop computer, it might not be great. So, you know, leave it plugged in, and if it really stops working, then bring it back to us and we'll give you a new one. We will then, working with we have a tech volunteer team that will determine whether it's worth for us to repair and put it back out into the community or not, or we literally will tear it down and sell it for parts. So that's been our approach. I don't encourage people to repair devices. And one of the reasons we're going away from the Microsoft Office 365 is that they're going towards a subscription model, and we really don't want to burden somebody with needing to pay for a subscription. Plus, we haven't really figured out actually how to do that when many of our clients don't have credit cards themselves to begin with, given their income level. So it's tricky, it's worth thinking about, but we try not to burden people with technology that's going to cost them a lot to keep and maintain. Maybe we have time for one more, and then Suzanne, I'm going to ask you if you could come up and talk about the breakout sessions before we go for lunch.
I kind of just wanted to comment on the how do you engage volunteers, or the word of mouth to get things out. I just wanted to address that because I am more of a community member, and I know that from my personal experience, the it's really hard to get other people to come back and volunteer into these services. I feel like all of us have been working on a way to get people more involved, and I'm hoping with the way that this future goes, we can all just literally look to each other and encourage each other to take some of that extra time, even when you're tired, and instead of going home, go to that extra meeting wherever your self-interest is, whether that be for food or for housing or for digital equity.
Thank you. That was a great transition.
This is a great question. I'm not sure that I'm totally prepared to answer a question about volunteer engagement, other than to say, talk to my colleague Sarah, who's sitting quietly in the corner, about her secret magic to getting volunteers to raise their hand, and B, come back time and again. What I will say is that people will come back and volunteer again when they're doing something that's of interest to them. So people might just try something out, dip their toe in the water and say, oh no, this isn't for me. But we try very hard to make sure that when somebody raises up their hand and says, I'd like to volunteer, I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of active volunteers doing dozens of different types of things. The trick is making sure that they're plugged into the right spot and something that engages them actively. And I know that Sarah will, like right up front, do an interview with somebody just to talk about what is it you want to do, what interests you, what pulls you into volunteering, what sort of time can you commit, all of those sorts of things. So it's an effort for sure, but I tell all the nonprofits that we partner with, there are lots of people out there who want to volunteer. They won't stay if they're not interested in what they're doing, though. So you got to find that right mix. Thank you for that question. Before I introduce Suzanne, I want to also give our panelists a round of applause while I present them with a certificate.